Um, yeah, so welcome everyone. Looks like a good turnout today. So thank you for joining us. Now that we're all in global lockdown, I think when we started these calls, things were just starting to happen in Korea. And now here we are, like 2 months later, everyone's locked down. So I hope everyone is keeping well and keeping safe. Yeah, today we have two great talks. So first up is Kwon. He's the CTO of Terra. So Do is going to talk about a proposal that he has made to basically create interest-bearing stablecoins, and it's part of the solution involves liquid staking. So we invited him on to talk about that. So that should be really interesting. And then the second talk we have today is Marouane from Unslashed to talk about insurance products and the plan. His company are working on some ideas in that space, so he's going to present some of that. So yeah, like I'll hand it over to you, Joe, if you want to take over. If you've got slides there, you take over and present. Thanks very much.
Yeah, so today we were going to have Nick from our team present, but his grandfather passed away today, so I'm just going to have to ad-lib this a bit. But so no slides at the moment, but thanks for the invite, everyone. So as Brendan introduced, I'm Kwon from Terra, and then we've been looking at using staking derivatives to create something called Anchor. And as Brendan described, from an end user perspective, it would be a product that allows users to hold stable coins and earn an interest on them. So in sort of the larger universe of staking derivatives, a lot of the things that I've read were things like it would be like it started from, it would be interesting if we could have liquid staking positions. So i.e. Wanting to speculate and bypass the withdrawal period. Two, we need staking derivatives that can be primitives for DeFi, as the staking rewards competes with the use of the tokens for other capital bearing purposes, like participating in lending markets and so on and so forth. So basically, we took a look at a lot of the the principally protected notes in DeFi. So we saw things like DSR. So for those of you who are not familiar, it's a DAI savings rate. So basically how that system works is you lock up a bunch of DAI in a smart contract, and then the stability fee, which is the fee that you need to pay to close, I think in the recent iteration it's called Vault, but they're CDP positions. So basically the CDP closure fee is paid out to people that hold tokens in the DSR contract in the form of interest. So basically, we were looking at a lot of these principally protected notes in the DeFi space, and we found that there were a couple of problems. So number one, so if you took a look at things like DSR or Compound, these principally protected notes interest rates weren't determined by some fixed schedule or by some macroeconomic influence, but through supply and demand for speculation of the underlying tokens. So for example, if you wanted to, for example, if you're participating in the DSR system, the amount of interest that you would get would be nowhere close to fixed interest, fixed income, but it would closely approximate, whatever the demand for closing CDP positions would be, which meant that interest rates could easily fluctuate from, like below 1% to well above 8% and so on and so forth. So basically, because the underlying driving force for the interest rate for these principally protected notes was speculation, right? It didn't create a good user experience in terms of being able to map out cash flows and being able to understand what they're able to get. So in essence, the return expectation was too volatile on some of these notes. Second problem was that a lot of these DeFi systems relied on third-party participation in order to function correctly. So as I'm sure all of you noticed on Black Thursday I think it was last week, basically what happened is that most of DeFi broke, and then Maker in particular, right? And that's because in order to liquidate underlying collateral to reclaim DAI, MakerDAO relies on a system of arbitrageurs, and Compound has something quite similar, wherein keepers need to buy up a bunch of the collateral at a discount and then use that to reclaim DAI, right? And then obviously in situations in which ETH is a falling knife, then that doesn't lead to a good experience. So we started to think about how you could sort of have something that is entirely programmatically or algorithmically driven without requiring third-party participation in order to function. Basically, the solution that we created is something called Anchor, and we thought it would be pretty interesting. So essentially, Anchor relies on two different components. So the first is a staking derivative called bLuna. So in the Terra ecosystem, our staking token is Luna. And then I think for Cosmos, the easy extension could be the Atom token. So there could be bAtom or something like that. And then basically what a bLuna position represents is Luna is a representation of a user's staked Luna minus, let's say, the bonding costs of this position. So for example, if a user stakes their Luna to a validator, and let's say that there exists a bLuna smart contract, and then you send this contract 100 bLuna, basically what this contract could do is take this Luna and then stake it into one of the validators with the lowest maximum commission. And then it could give back to you the number of bLuna, that is whatever number of Luna that you gave it, minus the max commission rate. So if the max commission rate was 20% and you send 100 Luna, you would get back 80 bLuna in return. So basically, and then you would also need to account for session costs and things like that. But basically what you would get is fungible bLuna representing one Luna unit minus the bonding costs associated with that. Yeah, and then so second is a slight modification.
Sorry to stop you, but I couldn't understand if you said it's minus the maximum commission rate or minus the bonding cost.
So
you said
by
it
bonding
represents
costs,
the staked Luna less either the bonding cost or the maximum commission rate. I think.
So by bonding cost, I meant potentially all of those things. So the cost that you pay out to the validator, or potentially the maximum amount that you pay out to the validator, is basically the cost associated with the bonding.
Okay,
right?
I thought you kind of you were trying to assign some sort of value to the lockup period and saying, well, if to unbond it's going to be 21 days, and you were trying to make some sort of value judgment around those 21 days, which seemed hard, and so that's why I asked. Sorry,
for this one, it's a future part, so it's something that could be done actually.
Sorry to have interrupted you.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So
Actually,
just to clarify.
So sorry, I'd like to interrupt a little more. Though, could you just give us an example? Like, assume you have like, I don't know, 1 million Luna, and you are bonding it to a validator with 5% maximum commission rate. What do you get in return?
Yeah, so let's say that you sent 1 million Luna to be staked, then what you would get is 1 million times 0.95, so 950K bLuna, minus, on our chain, the maximum session that you can get is 5%. So, slash another 5% off of that. So let's say 900K.
So may I ask, I don't know, I mean, I get why you may want to keep in reserve the thing for the slashing event, but why subtract the commission rate? I mean, the commission rate comes out of, sort of earnings earned with the 1 million Luna, right? It doesn't come out of sort of the principal. So why do you keep in something in reserve for the commission rate of the validator?
I have the same question.
Yeah, so basically, where we want to come to is that holding 1 unit of B Luna should give you the same amount of cash flows as you would as staking 1 Luna into a zero commission validator. Right. So
Okay.
in the Terra system, a lot of our motivation is centered around our cash flows of the Luna token. So basically, having the same units of tokens doesn't really mean anything unless you can have some linearity in the cash flows that is represented by those tokens. Does that make sense? So I mean, so when I say that the validator max commission is a cost, not to say that that's a bonding cost necessarily, but we need to account for those things in order for 1 B Luna to match a staked Luna position in cash flow.
I don't understand.
Which part did you not follow?
Well, I don't understand the design choice actually. You're locking in capital in order to take into account the fact that different validators have different commission fees, whereas the commission fees are applied to the staking rewards.
I don't see how those things are in tension.
Sorry?
Yeah, so I don't see how those things are in tension. So I agree that definitionally a commission rate is applied to the staking reward, but I don't understand why that's a wrong design choice.
Well, basically you're locking in the maximum commission, which is, I don't know, let's say 10% or 20%. Whereas you can have a token that increases in value, taking into account how much has been received in terms of staking rewards each time, which makes more sense.
So my intention here isn't to design the staking derivative itself. The end goal is to design a principally protected node. So I feel like, yeah, I need to finish explaining what I'm trying to do before you can criticize the design choice.
I think this is all my fault for interrupting. So I apologize.
No problem.
Yeah, no, sorry. Okay. Right.
Yeah. So basically, once you create B Luna, let's just treat it as a black box, and basically what you get is a liquid token that has a cash flow stream. And another characteristic of sort of the Terra system is that we have staking rewards that are paid out in stablecoin from the transaction fees from some of the payment networks that we run. So basically you have, stablecoin or loosely USD denominated cash flows coming to B Luna. And then so basically what you can do is that you can have what can be marketed as a zero fee lending market for B Luna, which means that you can take out a loan against your B Luna position, right? Similar to how you would do it in the compound money market, but you don't really pay interest. So basically what you pay is that you pay opportunity cost in the cash flows that would otherwise have gone to your B Luna position, but instead that goes out against the global pool of people that are willing to lend you the Terra stablecoin. So just to reiterate, what you can do with this is that you have a money market where you can collateralize B Luna in order to take out Terra loans, right? And of course, like you can use this Terra loan to take out, to buy additional price exposure to the Luna asset itself. You can use that to increase your staking position or to climb up in the leaderboard. And then you can do this without paying a fee that is attached to most money markets. Of course, in reality, if you look under the hood, you're paying the fee in the sense that you're not getting the staking returns that you were otherwise going to get. But this instead now goes to the people that are putting up the Terra to be borrowed by you. So
you're supposing that the staking reward is enough to pay out the people who are depositing the other side of the market, basically.
Yes.
Which is not automatically true.
Sure.
You get,
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so right now it's fairly attractive. So like the motivation, part of the motivation for why we wanted to do this is because Actually, if you look at how POS is designed, is the incentive mechanism is actually highly cyclical, which means that when asset prices are going up, more and more people are incentivized to buy up tokens and then lock it up, thereby reducing liquidity even more and then driving prices up even more. In the opposite case, when the principal is sinking, then people are more incentivized to hold in liquid tokens or to unstake, and then that drives prices down even more. So basically, in our ecosystem, we have a situation where stablecoin returns coming just from payments is somewhere around like 14, 15% at the moment. But given that the price volatility of the principal is so high, that people still prefer to hold it in some liquid format, right? Which they wouldn't really need to do if they can get price exposure to the upside in the cash flows through some sort of principally protected derivative, in which, in this case, they can do this. So the interesting thing is, like, we don't really have a fixed rate of inflation, right? So technically, if you enter into a position at a certain price, you know, we don't have like 8% inflation or 10% inflation or 12% inflation. Basically, as the payment network grows bigger and bigger, the cash flows are going to get more. So there's lots of people that want to get exposure to the potential upside and increases in the actual cash flows without wanting to gamble on the volatility of the principal. So we have a unique situation where, like, wanting to protect the principal makes sense, while, you know, you still want to get some exposure or some upside as the businesses participating in the ecosystem grows.
But aren't your borrowing costs going up as the protocol gets more successful in that situation? Because you've taken your B Luna, you are foregoing the staking rewards, you are using them to fund your borrowing cost. But as more, if you forego them and there are more transaction fees generated, you've just increased your borrowing cost.
Yeah, but that would ideally be reflected in the price of the underlying, right?
Okay, so the B Luna then would go up.
Yeah, so basically you have a money market where you create a new derivative that offsets the costs, opportunity costs. So what I mean here is that, like, was there a money market for Luna, then you wouldn't be getting cash flows from staked Luna anyway. So we create a staking derivative that allows you to capture some of that lost opportunity cost. And then basically you're trading price exposure for stability.
Okay.
What level of over collateralization do you expect? Because basically the stability.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically the kind of stability that you'll get is going to depend on the level of over collateralization that you're having.
So that's another great part that I forgot to mention. In sort of vanilla token systems or vanilla money markets, you need third-party participation, which is why you need very large over collateralization, and then you have falling knife scenarios where this is where ETH gets cyclical, right? This is where ETH gets cyclical, where when ETH prices are crashing, all the CDPs unlock, and then there's more ETH entering the market, and then that's when it gets ugly. But we have swaps built in between our Terra stablecoin assets and Luna. So basically, when we have a situation where we need to liquidate underlying collateral to guarantee principal, all we need to do is to take the underlying Luna position and then swap it into one of the Terra stablecoins. So we have an on-chain swap mechanism where there's no direct counterparty.
Okay, so it's already designed.
Yes.
And the swap mechanism takes into account which price for Luna.
Yes, but the tricky part here is that we have spreads that's also built into the protocol, and then that can technically go up to 100%. So we need to design. We need to design there needs to be over collateralization, and we need to be able to do it in such a way that doesn't leave the system exposed.
Okay. So you're going to have a maximum of over collateralization that's going to be maybe around 70% or something like this, or 170%, in order to take into a Okay.
Yeah, I think that's something that we need to think through a little bit more.
Well, it's novel, to say the least. It's novel, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, but one thing that I wanted to highlight though is that this is more robust from a sort of a black swan event perspective, because it doesn't require arbitrageurs to come in when the collateral is crashing.
I mean, I don't know how the swap system works, but I'm interested in understanding if you can elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, so basically we have an on-chain oracle where all the validators are required to submit votes for various types of Terra currencies. So we have, something pegged to the Korean won, the USD, the Mongolian Tigru, and then the IMF SDR. And that basically the idea is that for swaps involving Terra to Terra, you can swap it at the effective FX exchange rate between, let's say, the USD and the Korean won, and then you just pay a small Tobin tax. So that's 25 basis points.
Okay.
And then you're done. For swaps involving Terra and Luna, we have a mechanism that is quite similar to Uniswap, where like within a certain time window, let's say 24 hours, if one side of the trade becomes heavily favored, then that trade starts to get a little bit more and more expensive, and then vice versa. So that's the penalized cases in which like there's a large token dump happening in either direction.
Okay. Okay, so basically it's guaranteed by like a reserve that is deposited and that allows the swap to happen.
Sure. Yeah.
No, I'm still too far from the real mechanism.
No, I think that's largely accurate. It's just that neither Terra nor Luna currencies have fixed issuance. So basically the protocol would simply print in either direction to absorb volatility. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so the resulting, I mean, the result that you have when building a system like this is that you're creating a stable coin that is earning interest backed by B Luna or collateralized by B Luna.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, it's collateralized by B Luna or by Luna?
B Luna.
B Luna. Yeah. But basically, I think for the anchor system, we want B Luna to be one of the types of collateral. But I think there can also be lots of different types of collateral as well.
And is there are there staking rewards paid on B Luna?
Some subset of the staking rewards. So let's say it would be some percentage, but the important part is that you're buying prices. You're buying exposure to the growth of the cash flow while protecting your principal.
So I'd like to just explain my understanding of B Luna. So the way I understand B Luna is that, and so there's like, you can have B Luna, B atom, B region, whatever. But the general principle is B Luna. So what you're trying to create is almost like this. So imagine like God were to run a validator on the Terra network, and charges 0% commission.
There's heavy competition coming in.
Yeah.
This is why Epicenter is so good. The king of
I feel like I'm reading Plato's Republic.
Yeah. So and the God charges 0% commission, and God never gets slashed because that's God and can never get slashed, right? So if you delegate to God, you will make exactly the staking yield, right? And so what you're in effect trying to create is a token, B Luna, which simulates, like a delegation to God and is liquid, right? So you're trying to create this token where you put in $1 million there. Let's say you actually made a delegation to a real validator for $1 million Luna. It's going to skim off some Luna of the top. And let's say it's only going to give you 900,000 B Luna. But those 900,000 B Luna effectively act like, you know, a delegation to this God validator, which is like, it can never get slashed, and it will always have perfect uptime, and it will always produce the staking yield. So that this is sort of a mechanism to create something liquid out of delegations that are fundamentally fragmented across validators. So whether you delegate to Chorus or whether you delegate to Certus or whoever, you can extract B Luna from there, and B Luna extracted from Chorus will be the same as B Luna extracted from Certus, same as B Luna extracted from iClusion, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. in effect, this is like a liquid token that produces the staking yield. And since staking yield is determined at the protocol level, it's the same for all validators, which is why you have fungibility.
Sure.
So that's the first layer of the protocol. Now the second layer of the protocol is, trying to match people of two kinds. So one is, so I delegated and I got B Luna, but for some reason I want to replace this B Luna with a stable coin so that I can do something else in the market. And that something else could be buy up more B Luna leverage, or that something else could be I get a stable coin and I put it into some fancy compound protocol on Ethereum. So there's one kind of participant which has B Luna, wants to exchange, like replace this B Luna with a stable coin. And then there's another kind of participant which has like a stable coin and would rather get exposure to the rewards made by a B Luna. And so this compound like marketplace is effectively sort of matching these two parties and fulfilling the needs of both of these parties.
Yep.
And that's Anchor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. It's simpler now.
Yeah, that is simpler. Yeah.
So interesting. Have you thought about neutralizing the slashing risk? Okay, great.
Yeah, basically, this is a lot of what Mayor just said, but it's this isn't like, this idea is like maybe a couple weeks old. I mean, maybe 3 weeks. Brian, okay. When did I ping you?
Yeah. Maybe you told me first about it like 3 weeks ago or something like that.
Yeah. So part of the truth is obviously you guys have been thinking about this problem for way longer. So we'd love to get some great feedback. And lots of this we haven't really thought through. So like, for example, if we, just as the way that Mayor described, it's B Luna is intended to trade at a significant premium over Luna itself, given that, there's lots of advantages of holding B Luna over vanilla Luna. But whether the token can truly be fungible, how we should think about like slashing costs, how we should deal with Luna during upgrades. So there's like lots of pieces that we haven't been able to work out yet.
I have another question here. So, we had before the example, you have 1 million Luna, you put it in there and you get out, let's say 900,000 B Luna. So I get how this functions as like kind of a delegation to this, to God. But the 100,000 Luna that are, you kind of don't get B Luna for, there are still going to be some staking rewards. I mean, it's still basically some kind of asset there, right? Which has maybe a much higher exposure to slashing risk, but it also has some rewards made. Like, what happens with that? Who has kind of exposure to that?
Yeah, so that would the cash flow from that would go to the validator, right? So the reason why we discount that is because the cash flow to the B Luna would be less due to the validator's commission, right? So we wouldn't create a God validator for this purpose. We would just be cycling through our existing validator set and then delegating to each of these in turn. And then that essentially would reduce the cash flow that's going to the B Luna token itself. And given that each of these validators are going to have different max commission rates, the reason why we needed to subtract that was to make B Luna fungible.
Mm.
Yeah, but I suppose that when a user wants to close their B Luna position, they would, we would unstake the Luna and then give it all back, or yeah, something to that effect.
Okay.
I gave a presentation a few weeks ago regarding staking derivatives and DeFi, and I think it's something that can be built also using CDPs. I mean, if we take out the part where you have swaps already built out on Terra, you can build it with CDPs, you can build it also with the compound-like system, etc. So the swap mechanism, for me, I mean, my understanding, and you can correct me on this one, is that it's going to be necessarily limited somehow. You cannot print as much as you want. You should have a limit somewhere, no?
We don't have numerical limits, but we have rate limits, and that's what the spread system is supposed to enforce, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Because basically you're going to have a change in price that can go up to 100%. But if you have an event where you need like to offload a lot of collateral, you start printing a lot, and is there like a possibility to reach the limit pretty quickly if everyone is using, for example, this system?
Sorry.
Let's say everyone is using this is using the system, getting B Lunas and borrowing Terra's assets, stable coins, no matter what stable coins they are borrowing, and let's say there is a black swan event. There is a lot of volatility on the market, and B Lunas need to be swapped. If everyone is using this system, you're going to end up in a situation where you need to swap everything very quickly in order to protect people who were lending their stable coins. So how do you do it? How is this something that could work within the system as designed right now, or maybe 10% of the B Lunas would be swapped and 90% can be swapped? How would it work?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So one of the things that I thought about doing is to have sort of limits on how much B Luna can be liquidated all at once. So it would sort of have a priority queue of liquidations, is similar to the way that BitMEX does in its perpetual contracts. But obviously, the problem is that the longer that you take the time series, the more volatility and potential risk that you're taking on your books.
Yeah.
So that's probably something that we need to think through. Yeah.
Okay, so you need like to have an insurance fund as well in order to protect against these kind of cases, and I can provide you with insurance for this one.
Yeah, I thought that's where you're going, Marouane. You're looking for some angles there.
Well, I have an angle on Maker. I think I can have an angle on this one as well. All right,
Fair
but
points.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Any more questions, anyone?
I don't understand where collateralization is entering the picture here. maybe it's too basic a question after the discussion we've had.
Could you specify that just a little bit more?
So in this previous discussion, there was this mention of collateralization, over collateralization. Like my understanding of the compound protocol is essentially there is no collateralization as such in compound, right? Like it's like people that are depositing an asset and other people that are, oh, okay, so
you have a collateral.
You have a collateral when you want to borrow stuff. Oh,
exactly.
Okay.
Right.
Right. That's where it's collateralization is entering. So essentially, like if I deposit B Luna and I want to borrow the Terra dollar, then I have to deposit greater value in B Luna, like maybe 150% of the dollar value that I'll borrow, and that is the over collateralization ratio for the
That is
particular
correct. Yes.
for the
Yes.
particular market. And that is sort of a system parameter that Anchor will need to set.
Yes.
All right. Though we need to talk afterwards.
Give me a ping until Kwon on Telegram.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have business to do.
Good. Well, look, I think that's a good segue. I think we can leave more questions at the end because these two talks may join up at the end and we might have a conversation around it at the end. So Marouane, it's probably a good segue into your presentation then. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I'll share my screen and you let me know if you're able to see it. All right.
Yep. Yeah, we can.
Okay, good. So we already went through the liquid. Okay, so I'm Marouane. I'm working on Unslashed, which is basically a slashing insurance product. We started with Unslashed as a slashing insurance product. Then we moved to a more general approach regarding risk. So we are still focusing on slashing, but we found out about other very interesting niches in the meantime. So regarding liquid staking, the way it should work in theory is basically we're going to delegate tokens to a validator, and we are going to receive a representation of the staked token. So before we ended up with locked capital, long unbonding periods, and asset volatility. Then we have available capital. We are able to go long or short, and we can have also DeFi-like composability. So what we are doing with Unslashed is that we are transferring the risk. I'm sorry, I have an issue here. I'm just going to do this. Yeah, sorry.
Present.
Sorry?
Press present. Or
can you hear me or not?
We can.
You can see the screen as it is right now.
Yeah.
No, I thought maybe present, then you have full screen if you press present. No.
Yeah, but I'm not. Okay. I'm not used to it.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I was saying before. Basically, we had. Basically, without a slashing insurance, we're going to have a delegation with a validator, and we need a kind of trust relationship with the validator. And there is also this possibility of having a kind of centralization of delegations. So the bigger the validator, the more chances they are going to have to attract new delegations, and the delegator is bearing the slashing risk. With Unslashed, what we allow to do is basically to transfer the risk to a third party. So we have less trust, and we can also have a more diversified set of delegations. So this is more like a high overview of how it could work. Basically it's based on an insurance marketplace. So the idea is to say that we are going to have people who are going to be buying insurance covers and paying premiums, and other people who are going to be depositing collateral in order to be able to get the premiums. So on one side, we have investors with collateral. On the other side, we have people buying covers, and we have a marketplace that allows to price the risk, and we have a transfer of premium from the cover buyers to the investors. And the collateral basically allows to protect the cover buyers. So this is like the first step, the insurance marketplace. Once we have this in place, what we can do is that we can use it in order to create slashing risk-free delegations. So a slashing risk-free delegation is basically a token that doesn't have the slashing risk, where we neutralize the slashing risk completely. So the way it could work is basically by delegating a token to a validator. Let's say Bob delegates the token to a validator. Bob receives the representation of the staked asset. Let's call it LX. Then Bob is going to buy a cover on the insurance marketplace. He's going to receive an insurance token, which is IX. Then Bob is going to send IX and LX to our merger app, which basically is going to take the two tokens and send back a slashing risk-free liquid token. So this allows, after that, and I'm going to move to other sets of slides, this allows to have other applications. One application is similar to what Kwon was describing, which is basically to use the liquid asset to put it in a CDP, receive stable coins, and be able to trade the stable coins on a DEX, for example. If we repeat the position, we can have, or if we repeat the same thing, we can have something with some leverage. So, for example, we can build a leverage position on atoms. And the idea, if we take examples with Cosmos and Tezos, is that we will be able to receive more yield. So if we have a leverage position on a 3x leverage position of atoms, we are going to be able to receive like something like 27% per year of staking rewards. And we have also a liquidation point that is going to be higher. We can also do it for lending. So same logic. So we delegate, we receive a liquid asset. The liquid asset receives an insurance token. We use the insurance token in a lending protocol. We deposit it and receive an interest rate. So this is also something that could be done, and we can build something like a long short position. We can do a lot of stuff using this. And the idea is to say that this creates a lot of opportunities, but also bears some risks. So the opportunities for me, when we compare with what we have been discussing over the last weeks and the last talks that we had, is that it helps fight against the potentially centralizing effect of liquid staking. So right now, if we go for the current systems, and if for each validator we end up with a liquid token, each liquid token is going to be linked to the validator, and each validator is going to have a separate like trading pair. So we're going to have a liquid token for validator A with its own order book and its own trading pair, its own market. For validator B, it's going to have to be separated as well, etc., etc. And the risk on this one is basically to have the validators with the most liquid pairs ending up with the most demand. So you're not going to delegate to or buy the liquid token of a small validator, because you're not sure you're going to get liquidity on the market. And the idea behind having these liquid tokens is basically to have liquidity. So if we add this insurance token, we are able to trade all the liquid tokens as equal, and we don't have separate markets. That's the first part. The second part is to allow validators to differentiate. So if we have different premium prices for different validators, we allow them to differentiate using something else than commission fees, which is something that could also have a positive effect on the whole network. So we stop the commission fee dump, and validating is not a commodity anymore. There are a couple of risks that we can also discuss when we use insurance like, sorry.
Can you explain that? I don't understand how this, can you explain how this removes sort of the commission rate as a competing vector?
It doesn't remove it, but it allows validators to differentiate over something else. So basically, if you have a validator with 0% commission fee, and you see at the same time that their premium prices are very high, it will send a signal to the market or to delegators saying, okay, this guy is risky. He's having 0% and he's perceived as risky. So it means that he probably is not investing enough in his infrastructure, or he doesn't really care about the network or whatever. So it's more,
so by differentiating by something else, you mean that the insurance market kind of creates an estimate or sort of a market assessment of the slashing risk, and so
exactly. And it also gives a signal to delegators.
But wouldn't that technically be in a mature market? Not that POS staking is mature yet, but wouldn't that be represented in the amount of delegations that a validator has eventually? Maybe 20 years out.
The risk for you, it will be represented in the amount. I mean, if we think 20 years from now, I think that picking a validator is going to be more of a political act than an economic act. So you're working with someone who has the same ideas as you, and who has the same thinking as you, and who looks the same way at the network as you do. So you're not picking someone because of his commission fee, and probably also not because of the risks, taking into account the fact that these networks are going to grow big enough in order to make the risk become smaller, in order to differentiate. If we are thinking 20 years from now, I think it's more a political act than anything else. Picking a validator is more about what you think. No?
Makes sense. Yeah.
It's very futuristic in terms of discussion.
Right.
So the risk that I see is basically to have the insurance be used as a tool to make money out of a security exploit. So basically you have someone who found out an exploit, and then he's going to buy the senatorial validators hypothesis, and then he's going to buy an insurance and attack the validator at the same time, and they make money out of it. This is one way of using or misusing this insurance product. And another way is basically to have a validator who could exit scam his delegators by buying a lot of covers insurance, then intentionally double signing. So basically it's an insurance product, and we are going to try to avoid these two types of risks. Maybe you guys have other ideas or think of other types of risks that could, or other scenarios that could happen. But this is what from a high level perspective, this is what we are looking at.
Do you mind posting this deck the same way that Kwon posted some documentation in the chat?
Well, I contacted you in order to show you the whole deck and more details a few months ago. But yeah, I can post this one. I mean, this one is, it doesn't contact.
Me personally?
I think I contacted Tim.
Okay, well, I'm not Tim.
Yeah. Well, I tried.
Okay, well, I'm asking for a second chance.
You can have a second chance, and the third, and the fourth if you want.
So
no, it's like sorry.
Yeah. So one thing. I mean, I know we talked about this before, and so the one thing where kind of I had a lot of questions about. Maybe we can discuss that briefly. Do you mind going back one slide here to 4?
Yeah.
So, I mean, a big question whether this thing kind of makes sense, right, is how much collateral do you have to put up? And like, you know, if you look at the investors here, I mean, the investors have to put up some collateral and they have to earn some return. And obviously there are other opportunities to make a return, whether that's, you know, on a centralized lending platform or maker. There are lots of different options, you know, probably you can make 5% return these days, right, in the crypto space. So at the same time, right, this insurance cover has to have, you know, a certain value on the other side for it to the insurance covers buyer, right, so that it justifies the premium they pay.
Yeah.
Do you mind just walking through maybe some examples of like some numbers of like what this could actually look like, you know, if this product existed like today for, let's say, Cosmos? Like, how do you estimate, you know, what would be the cost of buying insurance? How much collateral would need to be put up?
Well, basically the idea is that it's going to be fully collateralized. Or to put it differently, I think we should never and shouldn't believe in under collateralized insurance.
So when you say fully collateralized, right? So let's say, to give an example, like you have $1 million worth of Atom delegation.
Exactly.
And we have $50,000 potential slashing penalty at this point.
Yeah.
So it would mean basically you would have to put up $50,000 worth of collateral. I guess you have to sort of account for also the fluctuating Atom price, right? So if the collateral is put up in some other token, maybe you have to put up more. No, if the price moves again, I don't know. You have to put up maybe 100,000 or 80, let's say 80,000 worth of collateral to account for that.
Yeah, actually, this was the first version that we designed. These are the hypotheses, or this is like the mechanic of the first version that we designed, that we discussed a few months ago. In the meantime, a lot of things changed. So basically, you can look at it as a capital that is going to be working at the same time. So you can be doing a lot of things with this capital, and it's going to be used for underwriting this slashing risk. So if you're doing it in pure dollars, you're not going to be able to do this whole thing. So you need to have something that is going to track the price of atoms on this side, and this is something that we are working on as well. So it's going to be fully collateralized. We are going to try to make sure that the over collateralization is going to be as small as possible. So it's not going to be 50% over collateralization, and at the same time, we need these cover buyers, and we make sure that these cover buyers are going to stay covered in case there is a slashing event.
So you're saying that when the investors put in the collateral, you have to create some sort of synthetic atoms that they put in?
We can work with synthetic atoms, and we are working on a solution like this one, actually. We can work also with not synthetic atoms and allowing people to underwrite an amount of risk while using the collateral to invest, lend, etc., and have different ratios. So basically, there is a whole risk management layer that is built out in the system that allows to manage these kinds of cases. And we let the investors or the risk underwriters have the freedom to manage their collateral the way they want under the risk management rules, basically. So this is not something that is really innovative per se, because it already exists in the insurance market, and it's called insurance-linked securities. But using smart contracts and using DeFi protocols, we can do more than what can be done in the regular insurance markets, basically.
Considering that the insurance pool has to be stored in the, a token that at least mimics the value of the staking token itself, do you think there are some issues where the insurance premium competes with the like the staking rate in terms of like holding, like because if I have something that is basically worth the same as a staking token, would you be competing against the staking rewards rate? And
okay.
Yeah, in terms of the premiums that's given.
I get it. I get the question. I'm not saying that you're going to hold something that is going to have the same price or fluctuate the same way as atoms. I'm saying that you're going to be able to hold it, but you're not obliged to hold it. So basically, if we have a synthetic, for example, we're going to be able to hold the synthetic when it's you think it's worth holding, and if the price of the synthetic starts going down, you're going to stop holding it. Basically, you're going to sell the synthetic and keep maybe cash or BTC or equivalent cash or equivalent BTC or whatever. So the idea is to say that you don't have this obligation. You need just to make sure that the collateral that you have matches the risk that you underwrote. That's the first point. In terms of competition, yes, definitely, and there will be competition. But this competition doesn't mean that you need to stake. And this competition, if there is a lot of demand for from the investor side for collateral, or if there is a lot of supply, of collateral, you're going to end up in a position where the prices are going to go down. So there will be, probably the market is going to find an equilibrium for each different validator. But it doesn't mean that you need to have an exposure all the time to atoms. You just need to have an exposure that is equal to the value of atoms, or the value of atoms at risk that you underwrote.
Okay, cool, awesome, thanks.
Welcome.
Any more questions?
And then the idea is you have some sort of are you building this on Ethereum or?
Well, basically, it depends on the other protocols. So we started in the beginning. We were starting on Ethereum, and then as we started discussing with different protocols, we are trying to find solutions. I mean, different protocols, the different liquid staking teams. We are starting to look at what they are implementing and how to make sure that it can work with their own implementations.
Yeah. What do you think the timeline is on this?
For V1 or for what exactly?
I don't know. It's just walk us through what does your roadmap and timeline look like, and what do you hope to launch when?
Well, we should be able to deliver it in 3-4 months time, and for the integrations, it's going to depend. It's basically protocol by protocol basis. So I mean, if we want to do it, for example, with the Everett, it would probably take some time. I mean, we need to have IBC, we need to have a lot of things. If we want to do it with the Akala, we need to wait for them to deliver as well, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So the whole thing depends. There is a dependency regarding the guys building these representations of staked assets. So we cannot just put it out there and wait for them to make sure everything works out. So we need to work with them individually in order to make sure that that the whole thing can make sense.
So another thing I mean, I think you mentioned in one of the previous slides or before, okay, one of the benefits of this is that, you know, or in some, let's say, delegation voucher, right? The challenge is that if you have some small validator, there's no liquidity on their voucher, or like the liquidity is an issue in general. But here, I mean, that also seems to be a big issue, right? Because now you have 125 validators in Cosmos. Like, I mean, who's going to underwrite insurance for, you know, some tiny validator? I mean, if their liquid staking tokens might be liquid, I mean, their insurance is certainly going to be smaller liquidity on that front than on the liquid staking assets. So how do you think you can address that?
Basically, if there is a very small validator who for which no one wants to underwrite the risk, basically, the price of the premium price of that validator is going to go up. I mean, basically, you can get a very high premium by underwriting the risks of very small validators if there is no supply for these validators. So the idea is to let the market price the risk via supply and demand. And
yeah,
at the same
but
time,
if there's no supply, there may also be no demand, right? I mean, it just may not work, right? If you...
I mean, the part of the design is that we are making it work. And for this one, basically, it's more like a 1 hour conversation in order to explain it in details. We can drive demand for smaller validators because the yields are going to be very high, or we can drive the supply, for small validators because the yield is going to be pretty high. And on the other hand, there is a willingness to have a diversified risk portfolio on the investor side. So if you're picking up only the first 20 or 30 biggest validators on a network, you might end up with a yield that is going to be pretty low. If you go and look for smaller validators, you can have a higher yield. So it's all about supply, demand, and risk reward. I'm not saying that it's going to solve the whole problem, but at least you don't end up with order books that are more attractive than others.
Okay.
I have one question as to what you said in the beginning, that you started with the insurance for slashing and that you found like other risks. Are you able to like share a little bit of what would be next?
Gosh, that's a hard question. All right. Well, basically, if you look at what happened with Maker recently, the $0 CDP liquidations, this is something for which we have a solution. I mean, counterparty risk is something that we identified, that we discussed, Felix, together maybe a few months ago, and this is something that is that is very important for all the lending protocols, not only Maker. This is one example, but basically there are risks everywhere. Anytime you look at something in DeFi, you have a lot of layers of different risks. The idea for us is to identify the ones that make more sense and to apply our approach to these risks. So slashing is a very interesting one. The counterparty risk is also very interesting as well. And there are a lot of other risks that we are going to announce in the coming months that we are going to be covering as well. And then, by the way, if there are any maker holders in this call, I'm interested in discussing as well, like big holders.
Hi, I have a question. If there's a product like a forward contract for staking, let it be Cosmos or Tezos or anything, can your insurance can be used as a shorting position?
A shorting position. Well, if you're going to be shorting the slashing event, basically.
Yeah, only slashing or?
No, it's only slashing.
So only slashing. So you cannot just program any other things, right?
No. On this one, we're not going to. We're not. It's really an insurance, meaning it's not an option, it's not a future, it's not a short selling position, or a short sell. Yeah, it's really an insurance logic.
Mm-hmm. And how the claims will be validated?
The claims are automatic because the slashing events happen on chain, so you can detect them directly, and you can have the claims directly. So this is the cool thing also about slashing, is basically you don't need to process claims. You just need the data to arrive, and then the money is transferred to the people holding the insurance tokens.
And what would be the incentive for them to hold that insurance? The people who are actually holding the insurance token to make the supply side.
The supply side is people who are underwriting risk, not people who are holding the insurance token.
Okay. Interesting. But then you said you built it on Ethereum, but not any other. You already have this protocol built on Ethereum or any other?
Well, we have a first version built on Ethereum, and we are also hacking a little bit on Cosmos. Right. We are discussing with other guys regarding Tezos. But basically, the idea is to cover the slashing risk on all POS blockchains.
What you gonna cover on Tezos? There is no slashing for users. There's only slashing for the bonds.
Well, it's going to change.
Okay. Cool.
For Tezos, basically you have slashing for basically they are looking into Tendermint as well, and they have something that is called programmable staking that's going to arrive as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crypto Labs.
Exactly. And basically they are going to, it's likely to change a lot of things, and it's likely to allow us to apply the same logic to Tezos as well.
Interesting. Right. Cool.
Any more questions? I guess we'll bring in Do as well. So any more questions for Do on his presentation, or maybe one for you, Marouane. You seem to be keen there on joining up the dots there between insurance and Do's ankle proposal. So can you talk a little bit more about where you see your solution fitting in there?
Well, basically what Kwon said at a point in time is that if there are liquidations, there's going to be like a queue similar to the one that BitMEX has. And in order for it to work, BitMEX, basically what they implemented is an insurance fund. So in order to make sure that that no one ends up losing money due to the liquidations, and that every position remains collateralized, they have an insurance fund that allows them to do this. And this is something basically that we could do for the system that Do is designing. Great. So instead of relying on on the market moving in the right direction at a certain point in time. You just have an insurance fund that is going to be getting a share of the fees, no matter what kind of fees are paid. And this fund is going to make sure that in case there are a lot of liquidations happening, in case there is a lot of volatility, you don't end up in a situation where some positions are under collateralized.
Yeah, that makes sense. So my only question would be that, so if let's say that you build this into like a smart contract, right? And then the rate for how much the insurance would depend on, would be decided by the market. But the problem is that if you build it into a smart contract, the LX token that is generated would have to be a fixed primitive in the smart contract operation. So even if like the cost becomes so expensive that it is prohibitively too expensive to use, it would, then couldn't you end up in a situation where the smart contract stops to function?
In this case?
Yes. Well, so basically what I mean here is that the slashing free LX is basically a composite between the IX token, the insurance token, and the staking derivative token.
Yeah.
Right? And then if you wanted to use the LX token as the slashing risk-free LX token as some sort of primitive in a DeFi smart contract, then like what happens in situations where the insurance cost is too high?
Well, basically you already paid for the insurance costs. If you have the IX token, you already paid for the insurance costs. All right. So it means that you created an LX token based on an IX token.
That's not what I mean. So what I mean is that if you're trying to build some sort of DeFi smart contract using the slashing risk-free LX as one of the primitives, what happens in situations where the IX token is too expensive?
Oh, so if the IX token is too expensive, you're not going to be able to create a slashing risk-free LX token. I mean, if you don't want to buy the insurance in order to neutralize the risk, nothing is going to happen. You're just not going to use it. That's all.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe I guess the only worry there is that then in that case, the slashing risk-free LX wouldn't be a reliable primitive.
Well, the slashing risk-free LX is not going to exist if the insurance token, the premium price for the insurance token is too high.
Exactly.
It's just as simple. So if the slashing is, if the premium price is too high, it means that the slashing risk is perceived as being very high. And if the slashing risk is perceived as being very high, you're not going to go to take these tokens and use them in DeFi. You're just going to cash out, to unbond and take back your tokens and run away.
Yeah, although I think for a long time, I don't think like the rates will be an accurate representation of what the slashing risk is. I think it's just be mainly, speculative up and down and opportunity costs mainly.
Well, so it depends. Do you consider the rest, the lending and borrowing rates on BTC and ETH, something representative of the risk, basically the risk that you have by depositing, the risk of ending up with a collateral not covering the amount of DAI that you took out as a loan?
No, but the BTC and ETH lending markets are mainly driven by time and opportunity costs, right? So for example, you might be perfectly fine to pay a very expensive interest rate or on some sort of contract if you wanted to get leverage for, let's say, 6 hours.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly the same logic. It's just that in order to have the leverage, you need, it's better in order to, if you want to have the leverage on DeFi, you're going to be buying the insurance token. And you're going to be paying the premium. So if there is a lot of demand, it means that a lot of people want to do something with the insurance or the slashing risk-free tokens, and they are going to be buying the insurance tokens as well. No, not really convinced.
Well, I mean, so I think like pricing is going to be determined by opportunity costs. Like, so for example, if like, you know, like some, let's say Compound starts to offer rates that are super high, of course, all the rates are going to be linked among one another, right? So I feel like the premiums and the costs are going to be super volatile, and it wouldn't be really determined by slashing costs, at least for a really long time. And second, I think what this volatility in the premium and the cover is going to result in is difficulty in designing smart contracts around the slashing risk-free LX. And as to your point earlier, if the premium is too expensive and the LX token has difficulty in being created, then it means that the token itself, because of the volatility of its minting process, will be very difficult to use.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is if we have very high premiums, we are not going to have, even if we have very high premiums, we are not going to have people depositing collateral on the other side. I mean, if we have an overpriced insurance, we are not going to have people who are going to be on this side in order to make the insurance have like a more regular price.
Yeah, maybe we side channel about this later. It's kind of like 1:30 over here, so.
Okay, but it's an interesting discussion, because the whole logic is to say that that the market is going to define the price, if the premiums are too high compared to the real risk, we're going to end up with a lot of people who are going to be underwriting the risk. And if the premiums are too low, we're going to have people who are going to be afraid, and they are going to run away from that risk and look for yield in other places.
Let's
no?
talk. Yeah, let's talk later.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the validators will be participating in the market too. So they always the validators will be active participants in the insurance market.
I agree.
Yeah, if we are validators, we know that we are safe, and if people blow the risk of validating with us out of proportion, we of course will be putting our money where our heart is. So
I totally agree. I totally agree, and these are discussions that we had with a lot of validators, actually. So we know that a number of validators are going to participate in the market from the beginning. And we know that a lot of validators see their risk as something really, really low. So they're going to be able to underwrite their own risks.
Okay, I guess we will leave it there, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Doe and Marouane. Great presentations, really interesting stuff. Yeah, it's really nice to kind of move from kind of theoretical liquid staking into some more practical examples. So that's really cool. So thanks a lot for that. Just kind of update on where we are. Like we'll have another call in 2 weeks' time, but we're getting close to the end of the whole process. So the grant we have from the Interchain Foundation is to deliver a research report by the end of April. So we're getting close to that. So hopefully on the next call, Felix has been writing away on the document. So on the next call, I think we'll give you an update on that. It's getting to the time where we need to deliver a first draft to everybody. So we'll cover some of that on the next call. We're also hoping to have Regina Kai from UMA on the next call. I think what we wanted to look at is kind of tying together how liquid staking might feed into synthetics. So UMA are building out this synthetics building platform. So we asked her to come along and explain to us what synthetics are and how they work. And so, yeah, hopefully she'll be lined up for that. So that should be a really interesting conversation as well, just to kind of, again, to kind of focus more on the practical side of what liquid staking can deliver. Before we wrap up, is there any questions or suggestions or anything you'd like to see us cover in the next call? No? Okay. Well, look, thank you very much. Thanks again to Joe and Marouane. And
thank you.
In a couple of weeks. Thanks a lot, guys.
Bye.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.